Let's focus on what looks like a huge game for Liverpool at the London Stadium on Super Sunday away at West Ham United. 9 defeats in 12 games in all competitions. It does not make for very good reading, Carl. Sam Wallace in the Sunday Telegraph, his piece says Slot at risk, but Klopp won't return. Of course, we're going to talk about Jurgen Klopp when the manager that replaced him is going through a pretty tough time. Sam Wallace says Liverpool going back to Klopp, it feels like the kind of move clubs like them no longer make. Sentimental and also a bit desperate, even amid this extraordinary crisis for Arne Slot. He is under pressure. There is talk of a Klopp return, but sacking Slot and a return of Klopp, they both look pretty unlikely at the moment, don't they?
Yes, very much seems sort of the wistful single-digit percentage theory of happening right now. There doesn't seem to be any real appetite to remove Arne Slot, as far as I understand it, at this current point in time. And I think that the Klopp return comes from just like a little errant message in one interview he's done. By all accounts, Jurgen Klopp seems very happy in his role with the Red Bull clubs, and it doesn't seem like he necessarily wants to go back to full-time management there. But Liverpool have problems. Their defeat against PSV Eindhoven in the Champions League was worrying. They just didn't appear capable of running in the way that Arne Slot wants his teams to win. If you remember last season, when there were so many turnarounds in the second half, and very much the question to Arne Slot was, why will your team improve? And he said words that, he always said words to the effect about running capacity, of we thought we forgot we had to run, or we thought we didn't need to run, and then he made that very clear. Whereas now you look at this Liverpool team and they don't have that sort of upward mobility that they used to have. And I think that's a concerning issue.
Just on the Klopp thing as well, and let's not forget he had similar runs in his own time at Liverpool after winning titles. Although, there were mitigating factors. But, one of the major reasons I'd be surprised if he came back is, given there's been constant murmurs of tension between himself and the figure who was the new football power of the club, who was not Arne Slot, it's Michael Edwards. And there was there was almost this relay in terms of who was there and who wasn't. Klopp went and Edwards came back. That's one reason I just can't see it happening. And it's sort of move, as Sam says, that you can't see the modern Liverpool making. There's also a lot of talk from within football that, as Carl has spoken about there, Klopp actually has no interest in getting back into full-time management. That he wants, a little bit like Gareth Southgate, he wants to kind of use his leadership skills and management to go into other careers. All that said, it did feel a little bit conspicuous that on the day after a big Liverpool defeat, he's on social media rating chicken dinners or something like that. As a colleague put to me, that looked like a modern come and get me plea.
Jackie, Jonathan Northcroft in the Sunday Times has done a big piece on Arne Slot, why Liverpool are standing by Arne Slot for now. Miguel mentioned mitigating factors for Jurgen Klopp when he had bad runs. Are there mitigating factors here? Because he says, does Jonathan Northcroft, Liverpool's biggest issue of all is being in a period of squad transition. Usually it happens at the start of a manager's tenure and allowances are made. The difficulty for Slot is achieving success first with an inherited team. Is there a bit of truth in what Jonathan Northcroft is saying there?
Yeah, it's a really good piece by Jonathan Northcroft in the Sunday Times. I'd urge you to go and read it if you can. And he's clearly very well connected. He's clearly spoken to the hierarchy of Liverpool. It is very well sourced. It doesn't just say save Arne Slot for the sake of it. There's lots of reasons in there why they would. The relationship is a positive, ongoing one with the hierarchy. But there are also some damning statistics. It's their worst run since 1954. They've conceded more goals than any other team in Europe's top 5 leagues, except Wolverhampton Wanderers, obviously, unfortunately. One shot on target for Liverpool from Isak, their big summer signing, the biggest of the summer signings, £450 million spent in total. There are so many different factors. And we've talked before about how last season it was more a case of just picking up the baton, running with it. Huge credit to him for winning the title at the first attempt. Took Klopp 4 seasons to win his first trophy. And I just think a bit like Thomas Frank, who we've talked about before, he just needs to arrest this slide, this alarming slide of losing games by a 3-goal margin for 3 games in a row is not acceptable for Liverpool. Full stop, it's not, particularly at home against PSV, for goodness sake. So he has to address that immediately. But there are lots of reasons. The defence is absolutely shocking at the moment. Konate's just lost whatever he had, whether it's confidence, whether he's one eye on a transfer in the summer, whatever it might be. The statistics, again, in that very good piece, 27% more long balls aimed at Liverpool's defence this season when Liverpool are continuing to play the way they play. Everybody else is going more direct, particularly against them. And that's exposing the 34-year-old legs of Van Dijk, who looks a shadow of the player that we know. There are so many factors. But what I don't think the solution is just chucking the baby out with the bathwater, getting rid of Slot now and then going, right, who's around? Forget Klopp. That's just putting two and two together. It's not the solution, but they do need to arrest this alarming slide, particularly defensively. And we haven't even talked about Salah yet, who's lost what he had for the moment.
Exactly. And on that, you mentioned a number of factors. It is possible, this isn't exactly a clean explanation, but this is just... The reason this is so bad is because a combination of extreme factors coming together. Weighing over everything, people, I would have said people don't like to mention it, although it's naturally coming up a lot more now, is Diogo Jota's tragic passing. Yeah. Now, I have to say, it does feel jarring to put a genuine human tragedy in the context of football results, but equally, that's the context that the results are happening in. It's going to have some effect. We just don't know what that is. It's possible people involved won't know what that is for years. That's one, obviously, massive element there. On top of that, they've made huge changes. And a lot of these new players are coming into a dressing room that's grieving, that had a disrupted pre-season because of that. I think there are fair questions then over whether maybe Slot's specific personality is suited both to this situation and is suited and a transition like this. Because also a crisis like this is another element where before this, Slot's worst run was 4 draws at AZ Alkmaar. The sort of run of results that people just wouldn't bat an eyelid at. Whereas now he's at one of the biggest clubs in the world, suffering one of their, the worst spells in their modern history. Because even in the 50s, that wasn't this Liverpool. And then you've got kind of more specific football questions, like Slot himself kind of deciding between the former team, or how much of the former team, with Salah such a massive part of that, or a new team. And this is where I think you get into bigger discussions with Liverpool and the nature of the recruitment this summer, because it was always there, I have to say, amid all the excitement about what they spent, the number of star attackers they brought in. This is a little bit lopsided. And then suddenly you're in a situation where he's got Konate there, who just isn't playing well. Well, who do you bring in instead?
Joe Gomez.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's so thin.
Just picking up on that, Carl, because some of the players who delivered the title for Liverpool last season are not performing. Jack and Miguel have mentioned some of those players. So it's one thing saying, well, why doesn't Slot just drop Salah, drop Konate, maybe even drop Van Dijk, maybe drop Alexis McAllister? But then who do you bring in? And when you look at who they can bring in, do we then need to put a bit of scrutiny on those above Slot? Because if you're talking about, right, Konate goes out, drop him, let's bring in Mark Gahey. Oh, we didn't get him. But they had 3 months to try and get Mark Gahey, and they left it until deadline day, which was always going to be at risk, and that's how it proved.
It was unwise. It's also still a little bit head-scratching to me. If you look at this Liverpool team and you look at the Premier League, its current landscape, one of the big things now is aerial duels and second balls, and for Mark Gahey's many, many strengths, he is not the most outstanding centre-back in the air. So I don't think we can quite say, Mark Gahey would have fixed this, because, well, actually, no, if loads of teams are playing long ball, I'm not sure that would have been the best way of sorting things there. They are top-heavy in terms of recruitment. We're looking at a team now that has 2 incredible strikers in Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak, and we still haven't got an answer to how they were going to properly play. Doesn't seem like Isak and Mo Salah have the playing chemistry of, even Darwin Núñez and Mohamed Salah. One interesting thing is, we talk about players going out the team, there will be a point very soon where Mohamed Salah will be out the team for AFCON. And then you have the very interesting question marks, footnotes, however you want to describe it, of how are Liverpool going to play without Mohamed Salah? Will they be, quote-unquote, better without him for that short space of time? Far too many things have changed. You've changed both of your full-backs. Frimpong hasn't necessarily been available in the same way that you want, and he's a very, very different kind of right-back to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Kirkes looks very, very different to how he's playing at Bournemouth, and it seems as if Virgil van Dijk doesn't necessarily trust him in the same way that he used to trust Andrew Robertson. So it's this thing of Robertson comes back into the team, but everyone now knows he doesn't necessarily have the running power he used to. So while that chemistry is better, in air quotes, they still can't get up and down the same way you look at McAllister. had hernia surgery in the summer, doesn't have the mobility. And yet, for some reason, Slot's allowed Gravenberg to get on forward and move rather than sit in that more reserve position he had last season. So Arne Slot's been dealt a bad, chaotic, completely unprecedented hand for a Liverpool manager, I think, in this modern era, I should say. I don't think anyone would have predicted this sort of scenario. He is also playing that hand strangely.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difficulty here, in that, yes, there are huge things going on, loads of complex factors that combine and twist in this thought. That means there's no one simple solution. Unfortunately, Arne Slot has to figure out at least 4 solutions at the same time, while also his squad is constantly changing. So good luck to him.
Also, I mean, you mentioned at the start there how Gahey and dealing with kind of aerial balls and that. So it's only a few weeks ago since I felt like Liverpool's biggest football problem this season was basically how they dealt with this issue of this wider shift towards more aerial football, with Slot bizarrely and bluntly, and maybe in a very Dutch manner, openly talking about how opposition teams could hurt his own team. And then, they'd go and beat Real Madrid. This is actually, once this team clicks, they'll be able to do this. But it feels like that problem has unravelled into a whole other range of problems, which led to ultimately this situation where a very moderate PSV are just passing their way through them in the easiest way possible, and just laying bare how bad this has got.
Just looking at the recruitment, Jackie, just following on from that point, when you look at the numbers specifically, I think they brought in 4 or 5 players that would go into the first team squad, but they let 7 or 8 players go that were in the first team squad last season. Numbers-wise, it doesn't work, but also, as Miguel mentioned before, the lopsidedness, you could argue, of the recruitment as well is maybe hurting Liverpool and Slot.
Yeah, 7 in, 10 out. But the Isak thing, it was so long and drawn out and such a boring thing over the summer, and the guy never got a pre-season, then he injured his groin. And I mentioned he's only had 1 shot on target in the Premier League. That was against Man United. And really, they needed cover. It's easy to be wise with the benefit of hindsight, but cover for Salah. And as Cole mentioned, he is going off to AFCON soon, so that's going to be an interesting thing. He started every single Premier League game so far. They'll have to find a solution there. But yeah, and it sounds daft to say when you've spent £450 million in the summer, they've been left a bit short, and everybody else in the Premier League is going, zero sympathy, your problem. But I do think they are factual issues, and that defence is looking so exposed at the moment. So exposed. The Salah thing we didn't see coming. Of course, Diogo Jota, we always have to mention. But of course, when you do mention that, they won the first few games of the season and nobody saw this dip in form coming. So I do think it is a complex matrix of factors that are leading to this. Slot needs to stay, needs to be backed, which I think he will be. But equally, he does have to find those solutions quickly to shore up the incredibly porous defence, which is hemorrhaging confidence at the moment and leading to all sorts of problems elsewhere.
Fantastic stuff. I'm just glad you haven't booed me yet, considering that you've been
it's kind of in their 90s.
from the terraces.